Data entry shortcuts. These are one of my favorite. I don't like entering data by hand. Okay, probably my least favorite thing in the world, actually. But sometimes we do need to enter it. For whatever reason, we don't have the bank data, we don't have a digital data. We have to enter the transactions by hand because our customer gave us some sort of handwritten register, and we have to use the check register. So what are the techniques that we use for that? All right, let me close all here. And what I'm going to ask you to do, generally speaking, is this left navigation bar, I think takes a lot of real estate of the screen. So I'm going to recommend that you use the top icon bar instead of the left. That gives you a lot more real estate to work in. I find that to be a lot more comfortable. And the next thing you want to do is open the check register. So I'm going to hit Control R on the keyboard. That's going to open the check register. And let's say I want to create a new account that I want to work with. So let's say I want to work with a new checking account that we created, or maybe a credit card account. So I'm going to select my Chase card. And I'm going to enter a bunch of transactions in there. So I'm going to hit OK. And there we go. We got a blank check register. Now, in order to make this just a little bit more fun, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this check register and I'm going to open it about this big over here. And then simultaneously, I'm going to open a profit and loss report and put it on the right-hand side here. And I'm going to filter. I'm just going to show this here, right? So I got my profit and loss here on the right-hand side. So I kind of see simultaneously while I'm typing everything in there. I'm going to make the font of the P&L a little bit smaller. That way I could maybe possibly squeeze a little bit more data in there. I'm also going to collapse the sub-accounts. I'm going to collapse the sub-accounts. There we go. And I'm going to expand that over again. All right. So I'm showing you the P&L on the right-hand side so you can see in real time what's going on. On the check register, I'm going to start typing a bunch of transactions by hand. So first thing you want to do is obviously the dating shortcut, right? So I'm going to start by entering a transaction on November 1st. So what do? I type 1101. That's it, 1101, and then hit tab. That's it. I'm done. Right? I don't have to click on the drop-down menu. I don't have to select the one. I don't have to put slashes. I don't have to put the entire thing, right? So we're going to put 1101 and then tab. Okay, and then it's going to go into the reference column. Typically, we don't use that unless we're writing checks. So then I'm going to hit tab one more time, and then I'm going to go into the payee column, and this is where I'm going to enter my vendor's name. So let's say, for example, we went to Taco Bell. So I'm just going to type Taco Bell. Very important. I type Taco Bell, hit tab, and then enter, and then enter. So tab, enter, enter will quick create that vendor into your system. So you want to avoid using the mouse. As a matter of fact, I teach in a classroom setting here in Miami, and I physically go to all my students' mice and I take them away and say, you're going to do data entry without using the mouse. So you got to force people to use the keyboard shortcuts. I recommend that you and your team implement that because you'll be entering data so much quicker. All right, so let's say we spent $18.57 in Taco Bell, and then I'm just going to continue to hit tab. So tab until it gets into the account drop down here. I'm not going to use the mouse. I'm just going to showing you where we are. And then I'm going to type here, let's say meals. So I'm going to type meals, and there it is. And then I'm going to hit tab, and then I can enter a memo or not. Generally, what we're doing massive amounts of data entry, we skip memos altogether. So at this point, I hit tab one more time, and it will save the transaction for me. You can see on the right-hand side how my P&L is being populated in real time. Let's say on the next day, 1103, and then I hit tab, and then tab. Let's say we went to Office Depot. So I'll type Office Depot. It's not a vendor in the database. So again, tab, enter, enter. It creates it as a vendor. And then let's say we spend $67.89, tab, and then I'm going to put Office Supplies, tab, tab, and that enters it in there. So I think that if you put all those things in play, the tab, the dating shortcuts, the enter, the tab, enter, enter would be really useful. Okay. This also works with account numbers. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and turn on account numbers, which are turned off in my sample file for now. So I'm just going to click on use account numbers. And some people know their account numbers. Some people memorize account numbers. That's possible, right? So let's say on November 5th, so 11:05, and then hit tab. Let's say we went to Best Buy. So Best Buy, tab, enter. We spent $413 in a printer, hit tab, and then let's also put office supplies, and then and I can just type office, or I can put the account number 6300. So you can either type the account number or type the account name, tab, and that enters it in there. Okay, so that's just really neat. And then again, I like having the P&L in real time next to it, because I kind of see, what's being entered in there. The other thing I recommend strongly is knowing your one line and your split shortcuts. They're down here. So we have Alt S for splits and Alt 1 for one line. So let me explain both of those. Let's say that on November 9th, I'm going to pay a bank, and there's going to be some sort of loan. So I'm going to put here, let's say, Volkswagen Finance, and then I'm going to split this between principal and interest. So that's $600, and I want to split it. So in this screen, I can't split it. So what I do is I'm going to hit Alt S, and that opens up the split screen. And then at this point, I can put, I can send the Volkswagen loan. All right, so I'm just going to type Volkswagen loan in there and create that as a long-term liability. And then let me just expand this a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. And then I can say, okay, so that was $341 that went to the loan, tab. And then I type interest expense for the second line, and it'll automatically fill the remaining of the calculation, right? So at this point, I can hit Alt S one more time to close my split, and then I can keep hitting tab until the transaction gets saved. The other shortcut I like quite a bit is the one line. And the reason why I like the one line is because I like when my data entry to feel like a spreadsheet, okay? So if I hit Alt 1, it turns it into a one line setup. And in a one line setup, again, it doesn't really increase the speed, but I think what it does is just makes you feel a little bit more comfortable about the data entry process. So let's say on the 10th, so 11:10, tab. Let's say we purchased a something in Amazon. We type Amazon, tab, enter to create the vendor, and then we put 6300 for office supplies. Hit tab. Let's say that's $180, and let's say that for this specific case, I do want to add a memo. So I just press Alt 1, open up the memo, tab over to the memo, and put new headphones for office, right? Whatever the notes are. Then I can hit Alt 1 again to get rid of that, and then hit tab a bunch of times or enter, and it will save the transaction. The other really important thing is to know Alt tab, right? So tab moves the cursor forward, okay? So when I hit tab, the cursor goes in this direction. But if I want the fields to go in a reverse direction, I do Alt tab. So I press tab to go from payee. So let's say I went to payee and I type Amazon and I hit tab and I said, oh, I made a mistake. I didn't meant to put Amazon, I meant to put Apple. So most people are tempted to grab the mouse and bring the cursor over and change the vendor there. What you want to do is simply just hit Shift tab and then type Apple, your new vendor name. If you need to create it, Alt, enter, creates it, and then put your dollar amount and then hit tab until it gets saved. So those are my data entry shortcuts. One thing I strongly recommend is down here, believe it or not, okay, often overlooked feature is sort by. And one of the things that happens with sort by is by default, this is going to sort by date. It's going to sort by date. So I'm going to show you where this becomes a common issue. I'm going to select a different account, one that has a lot of transactions in it. So I'm going to grab, let's say, this one. And let's say that I am in the check register where there's tons of transactions in there. And I want to enter a new transaction here that is for a date that's not visually listed in the transactions that I have. So let's say I want to enter something for November 15th, 2020, and I'm going to put a check to Hector Garcia, and I'm going to create the vendor. I'm going to put here $10,000, and let's put here contractors, subcontractors, create that as let's say a cost of goods sold. And then what happens is I'm going to hit enter, or I'm going to hit tab. And then I want you to pay attention to this. Many people doing data entry with QuickBooks Desktop, they get stuck here. They freak out because I'm going to press enter or save or record. And basically my transaction was saved, but I don't see it on my screen. So what a lot of people, when they do data entry, is because they can't see it on the screen, they don't remember whether they saved it or where they last left. So when you're entering data that's in the past before a transaction that's visually available on the screen, you want to change this sort by from date, right, to ordered entered. So when you change it from date to order entered, it will show you based on when you last created the transaction. So the sorting will show you all the way in the bottom the last transaction you enter. So if you're going through a list of transactions and you're entering them manually, you want the end user to get visual feedback when they put their head up and look at the screen to see what was the last transaction they entered. So these really small, subtle things go a really long way. I spent hundreds of hours trying to we have a bookkeeping practice, right? And we do a lot of data entry. So I spent hundreds of hours, thousands of hours in the past 12 years figuring out how do I get my data entry people to work faster, because I don't believe in outsourcing. I want everything done inside of my office, inside the US, and labor is expensive. So I want to find every single shortcut out there to enter data as quickly as possible. All right. So that being said, we're going to move on to a different feature, a feature called batch enter transactions. Probably my single favorite feature inside the entire QuickBooks ecosystem. If you agree with me, I'm welcome to put in the chat that you agree that batch enter transactions is the single best and most important feature in the entire QuickBooks ecosystem. But if you never used it before, go ahead, put in the chat, never used it before. I would love to see how many people have never used this feature before. All right, so let's go ahead and open up batch enters. So the way you open that is you click on the accountant menu, and you go down to batch enter transactions. Okay, so it's in the accountant menu, batch enter transactions. If you're using QuickBooks Enterprise and not QuickBooks Accountant Edition, that feature is going to be under company, and it's going to be somewhere around here where it says make journal entries. It's somewhere around there. But since I'm using the Accountant Edition, that's going to be under the Accountant menu. Okay. So again, we're going to go to batch enter transactions. And then basically, essentially what we're going to do is we are going to copy and paste transactions from Excel into this screen. And this is going to enter them in batch. However, you don't have to necessarily copy and paste from Excel. You can also enter things by hand here, just like you were able to do it through the check register. And there are some pros and cons to this compared to the check register. What's better than the check register is that I can pick and choose which columns I want to work with. So for example, I can click on customize columns on the top right, and I can choose which transactions I want to enter. For example, I don't want to use check number because I'm going to enter, let's say, debit card transactions. So I don't even want to bother with putting a check number. So I'm going to remove that. And then let's say I'm not going to add any memos. So I'm going to remove that. And also I want to put them in this order: date, payee, and then amount. So I'm going to bring amount up here. And let's say I also want to enter the class. So I'm going to grab the transaction and click on class. And then I can click on move up over here and arrange it and move it. So I got date, payee, amount, class, and then account, right? So then I hit OK. So I basically customized my data entry experience, right? So in here, let's say I'm going to start here where it says date, and I'm going to start typing my transaction. So let's say on 11/20 and I hit tab, I went to and I purchased some equipment from let's say John Deere, right? So I'm going to do John Deere construction. Okay, and then I hit tab, enter, enter, and then on the amount, let's say this is $4,000, and then under class, I can click on the drop down menu to see them, or I can also hit Alt down arrow, so I don't have to use my mouse to open that menu. So Alt down arrow and up arrow will open and close that menu for you. So Alt down arrow will open that, and then let me just hit Shift tab here. Alt down arrow, and then I can hit down or up to pick. So let's say this is new construction, and then I hit tab and then the account. So in this case, I can put, let's say we have equipment. Okay, let's delete that. I think it's called construction equipment. There we go. I type construction equipment, tab, and then I enter the next transaction. What's cool about these is that these transactions are not saved yet. They're basically queued up. And then once you press save, it will batch them in there. So that allows you to enter them first, look at them, look at the subtotal before you enter them. So let's say on the 15th, we went to, let's say Taco Bell again, right? And then we spent $47.78. Let's say I don't know what the class is. I'm just gonna skip it and then put meals, hit tab. Let's say on the 1st of 2020, we went to Chipotle. I'm just typing the vendor name, hit tab, enter to create the vendor. And let's say this was $27.89. I don't know what the class is. Hit tab, and then also put meals. Okay. And let's say on the 2nd, so 11/02/2020, we went to Sherwin-Williams. Okay. I don't know if that's spelled correctly. Tab, enter. We spent $196.86. And let's say we know what this is. Let's say this is remodel, and this would be job materials, maybe. That makes sense. Job materials, hit tab. So that's actually a pretty cool thing, right? Right now at this point, notice that a couple of my classes were not selected. One thing that's really cool about this is if you're gonna enter all the transactions for one particular class or for one particular expense categories, you can literally just right click on where it says class, or right click on where it says account, and click on where it says copy down. And then what copy down would essentially do is it will duplicate that line across the board, your batch enter screen. So let's say all these are going to be new construction class, and let's say we don't have any classes entered there. I right click on it and then click on copy down, and it will add that class across every line item that I have. Before I batch enter them, I can see in the bottom here the total that I'm about to enter. So if I'm checking that against some sort of manual sheet or something like that, then we're going to click on save transactions, and then they'll ask you, are you sure you want to save that into the checking account? Remember that you can click on the drop down menu and double check which account you're going to enter these into, and then I click on save transactions, click yes, and that will create all the transactions for you in one shot. So a lot of people like this for manual data entry. Some of my team members do it for manual data entry, but I think that is more powerful when you combine it with Excel. So I'm going to click on the drop down menu there, and I'm going to open up Excel, and I'm going to open up, let's say, a spreadsheet. Okay, a spreadsheet that is going to have some credit card transactions. Okay, so let's say that I have this spreadsheet here. I downloaded from the bank. Okay, I downloaded these transactions. This is, let's see, this is 247 transactions. I'm going to copy these and put them in a blank spreadsheet because I want to show you possibly what's more likely to look like. So I'm going to go to new and bring them in here. And I'm going to delete the category because they never really come with an accurate category. So let's say this is exactly what came in from the bank. We have date, we have payee or description in this case, and then total. Let's say I don't have the categories, but all I have is this from the bank. So I have we have an Excel class I'm teaching after this, and in that Excel class, I'm going to show you some additional techniques of things that I do In Excel, that's today at 2:15, I believe. So right after this, where I kind of talk about those things. But I'm going to show you just really, really quick one life hack that will save you tons of time when it comes to data entry into QuickBooks. And that is selecting all of your payees, selecting all the payees and copying them, right? And in the Excel class, I'll teach you how to clean them first. But for now, let's assume they're clean. And then I'm going to click on copy. And then I'm going to go into QuickBooks. And before I do the batch enter, I'm going to go into the list menu. So I'm going to click on list. And then I'm going to go into add, edit multiple list entries. So in list, add, edit multiple list entries, I'm going to select, wait until that loads, list. I'm going to select vendors up here. And then I'm going to click on the view menu and click on saved vendors. So that's basically going to give me a blank spreadsheet for me to import vendor names. So I downloaded all these from my credit card Excel, right? I went to my credit card banking and I downloaded transactions in Excel. I'm going to right click on that and click on paste. And that's going to allow me to create all these vendors in one shot. Yes, you can create some duplicate vendors. That's not a good thing. In the Excel class, I'll show you how to do some vendor cleanup. So once I save the vendors, in any duplicates will stay in red. That's fine. It won't save those duplicates. Hit close and get out of that. And then we're going to go back into batch enter. And now I'm going to select the transaction type. So let's say this is going to be a credit card charge, right? Because I'm going to bring in some credit card charges in this case. So it's going to be credit card charge. And I'm going to go into my spreadsheet. And then I'm going to copy and paste date, payee, and total into batch enter. But before I do the copy and paste, I want to double check, triple check, quadruple check that my columns look the same. So there's going to be date, payee, total. So let's see what we got. Date, payee, okay, account. So I'm going to click on customize columns and I'm going to move the amount to the third line. So we got date, payee, we got date, payee, and amount, and that's how we're going to do it. And then hit OK. And now I can just check again. Let's just copy this data and bring it into QuickBooks and then paste. So basically, it's going to bring in all the transactions from Excel. It's not going to prompt me to create the new vendor because I've already proactively created the new vendor. If you want to avoid duplicate vendors, then you just want to paste them in there and then go through them as you know there's an issue. And I'll give you an example what I mean by that. Let's say, for example, this would say Amazon.com. Let's say this three say Amazon.com, just to clarify. And then I'm going to copy and paste all the transactions. And hit copy, go back into QuickBooks, and I'm just going to paste. I'm going to hit clear, okay, and paste over it again, paste. And notice that the two Amazon.com, that vendor is not in my database. It will just give me a red. So I need to go in it, click on the drop-down menu, and find the one that's already there, or create one on the fly. So you got the option to create them proactively if you don't want to be creating them in here, or but just remember that that might give you some sort of error on the data entry process. I can also create them on the fly, typically just by clicking on it and then clicking out of it, and then click on Quick Add Vendor, and I can create the separate vendors if I want to. Now, account, right? That's going to be up to you. You're going to have to sit there and select each of the categories. One thing I recommend, I'm going to clear this up one more time. I'm going to give you another pro tip over here is before you do the copy and paste, I would sort them. So I'm going to grab all these and I'm going to sort them by my payee. And the reason for that is because typically in the data entry world, you're going to put the same category to that same vendor. So I'm going to take all the entire transactions here. And again, especially if we got repeating vendors, and I'm going to show you how copy down becomes a super useful tool. So I'm going to go back into QuickBooks here, and then I'm going to copy and paste that again. Okay. And then my first one is 7-Eleven, right? So let's put this under automobile and possibly what, fuel expense. So I put it under fuel, and then I just right click and copy down. And then all of my first 7-Elevens have auto and fuel in it. Then I can go to the next one, AC Moore, and put their office supplies. I can go here, Adobe Acrobat, and I can put office supplies, and I can right click on Adobe Acrobat and click on copy down, and that puts everything on the office supplies. Then I can go to my next one, ale meat, let's say that's meals. And then I'm not gonna copy down because there's only one of them, so I'm kind of making the decision on the spot there. And all the Amazons are automatically office supplies. That's awesome. I'm gonna scroll down, see how much time I'm saving from having to categorize each one. Okay, then we got AMC Weston, let's say that's a personal expense, shareholder distribution, and we can just come in here and start doing my data entry. I can use Alt Tab to navigate through these and categorize these super quickly. So those are really the options that you have. Do I have a parking account? Parking, I don't, so I'll create that on the fly. We got parking, tab, setup, enter as an expense. We can recategorize that later. Now, one thing I'll show you is sometimes when I do data entry and I'm in a hurry, I'll just put everything to office supplies or the most common expense for that matter. And I just click on save transaction. So basically I ignore categorization. I put everything, like a blunt instrument, put everything in the most common category. Okay. And then after I enter it, I do my bank reconciliations just to make sure that everything is accurate. And then I go into the accountant menu and I go into client data review and I go into my second favorite QuickBooks Desktop feature, which is Reclassify transactions. So batch enter, my favorite, Reclassify, my second favorite. And you would do this when you're more keen to getting the data in there and reconciling, just so you're done with data entry, and then do categorization later. For example, I'll give you an example. I had a brand new bookkeeper in my office that knew nothing about accounting, right? I mean, I basically hired him when he was like 17, right off high school. And I told him, and he knew Excel. So I'm just gonna show you how to load the transactions in there, load the payees. You're gonna put everything in under office supplies. Don't worry about categorizing, and enter, these 6 credit cards and these 4 bank accounts. I showed him how to reconcile. And then I went in there afterwards and did my reclassification. So that really saved me the data entry time and left the thinking to me, which is picking the categories for these things. So I'm going to go into Reclassify transactions here. Okay, so accounting, client data review, Reclassify transactions, and show you how that will work. So let's say this was for, I believe it was 2020. So let's do all of 2020. Okay, and I'm going to go into office supplies, which has obviously an excess of things. And I can sort these by name. And then in here, all I really need to do is then select the ones that I want, right? So I'm going to select all the Adobe, let's say all the Adobe ones. Okay, so I just click on them. And then I come down here to where it says change account to. And then I'm going to put this under, let's say I'm going to put this under a category called software. Okay, so we got software, tab setup as an expense, click on Reclassify, and done. That got rid of all those transactions in one shot. I'm going to scroll down a little bit more. Okay, let's say I want to go to Bravo Supermarket, select those 2. Let's say these are personal. And then I want to select all the Chick-fil-A. Let's say those are personal. So at this point, I'm just basically selecting them by hand. So I'm going through my list, right? All the ones that I know they're personal. So I'm putting a checkbox into each of them. Okay, so all the ones that I know are personal, I'm scrolling down, marking them, and just getting them out of there. Okay, and then once I checked all the ones that I want, I come down here and put shareholder distribution, whatever the account that I want to reclassify to can go to, and then I click on Reclassify. So that's sort of an inverse way of getting the data in there. Push it all in one shot, push it all into one account, and that's it, and Reclassify afterwards.